I would encourage you to stop. I'll just tell you that you're being watched. The point of the phone call is stop what you're doing.
Not gonna do that.
Fuck you, Charlie.
All right, there is a lot going on, and I've been really busy. So let's jump right into this and try to get some stuff out of the way because there is so much insanity going on. Yahoo News just released this news article, AI takes on grief and loss. With new chatbot that lets you talk to dead loved ones. They already released this news like 2 or 3 years ago, and then they're bringing it out like it's new again. You can talk to dead people. They've been able to do this for decades. Decades. But now the consumer can get to it. And then they'll still hide the weaponized version, and people will believe that they're two separate things and that the weaponized version doesn't exist because people are idiots. Over the last 3 years, it is over the top ridiculous. Let's check out some UFO stuff. A friend of mine sent me this today. U.S. recovered non-human biologics from UFO crash sites. Do you believe this? These are the same people that said no, 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 no for years, and now all of a sudden they want to sell you something. Doesn't that sound familiar? They did this to Bill Cooper, and Bill Cooper finally figured it out. And then they did this to Paul Bennewitz. I have to always keep going back to Paul Bennewitz. Paul Bennewitz was a guy who, much like myself, ran into some signals and started analyzing these signals. So they went after him. And since he was a patriotic dude, he bought everything they told him. Everything. Now, the basic story is Paul Bennewitz, he found some signals, and they came to him and basically said, hey, Paul, those are UFOs. So now they're doing the same thing to the entire population, and they are buying it hook, line, and sinker. Now, I can't play you the actual video, but let's listen to some of the audio about Paul Bennewitz.
The professional disinformer, trained to lie.
There's probably about 80% of false information being presented, about 20% of factual information. Unfortunately, the UFO community doesn't know which is which.
And that's still true for 2023. And half of these guys that are out of the loop from the government, if they ran into some crap out in the fucking desert, they would actually believe it was a UFO because they don't have the security clearances. You know, these guys that might think they're high up are just cogs in the machine. Let's keep going.
Paul Bennewitz, a self-made man, a very successful businessman, was systematically driven insane, wound up in an insane asylum.
It was unfortunate what happened to Mr. Bennewitz, but they were supposed to protect something and they did their job.
They were supposed to protect something and they did their job, which is exactly what they're doing to the population now. They are getting you people ready for the biggest scam in history. It's going to make 9/11 look like some carnies came through your neighborhood.
A lot of people said he was a genius with electronics, and he decided that he was going to listen in on what was going on at the base. Maybe he could pick up some radio signals about what this thing was. And he knew about where to start looking. He started picking up these bursts of information.
Now, Paul started to pick up these bursts of information. He was recording this stuff and then figuring out what was going on later. This is almost identical to how I accidentally ran into these signals that I began recording. It is amazing what they did to him.
Paul didn't know initially what he got. He didn't analyze it. When he had gotten the first series of transmissions, he recorded them and then he contacted the security officer for Kirtland. I began a dialogue with Paul, trying to find out everything he had. And as I did, then I learned that a lot of the information he had wasn't anything to do with a Soviet threat or some kind of hostile threat against Kirtland. It was information that he had gathered because of the fact that he was a scientist and because he had sensitive and sophisticated equipment. He was collecting emissions coming from the base. And we had to decide on what we were going to do then.
So they systematically went after this guy. One guy, which was practiced. This was decades ago. Go analyze the audio from the Vegas schmooting. Then analyze that UFO crap that went over you. When you mix blue beam with audio sound weapons that are the same as the soldiers that dealt with OP Rock, and then you mix that with actual weapons that can hurt and blow stuff up, you have an arsenal of deception. Let's keep going.
Were we going to allow this to happen, or we were trying to convince him otherwise?
Paul was being occupied with the other guy. Rick was taking pictures of all Benowitz's equipment in his house.
We kind of planted the seed in Paul that what he was seeing and what he was hearing and what he was collecting was, in fact, probably maybe UFOs.
So that is what they do. They cover what they do, and they tell people, hey, man, that's probably a UFO that you're picking up there. That's what they've been doing to these UFO people for decades. And listen, I used to be the biggest wanna-believe guy in the world. But the reality is, it's not. It just isn't. It's their technology. They are covering it.
And it was very easy to convince Paul. Paul was a World War II veteran. He's very patriotic. He always flew his flag. Those type of people you can convince that, listen, just telling Paul, you can't tell anybody else about this because this, they could get in the wrong hands. And so immediately Paul became a cooperating source, and he held everything that he had gotten in secrecy.
So what they're saying right there is, and I'm going to make it as harsh as possible, is those who are full-on true believers are suckers and can be suckered very easily. And they can be suckered every which way around until they don't know which way is up and they don't know which way is down. Flat out.
At one point, another agency was conducting an investigation, and they set up a surveillance across the street from him. And Paul's son contacted me and said, leave my father alone. You guys are across the street. He's getting to the point that he's being paranoid. Well, I knew it wasn't us.
Okay, it wasn't them. It was the NSA. So the NSA got wind of it, and they said, hey, let's drive this guy crazy. So the NSA moved in across the street from him, began hitting his house with their own signals, Paul and his radio equipment. And Paul lost his goddamn mind.
He said he saw people coming in and out of the house and looking out from the curtains and things like that. And as it turns out, the NSA had some people in this house. They were watching him and actually beaming messages straight across the street into his antenna setup.
If you talk to somebody about this kind of stuff, hey, they're beaming messages over into that guy's house. They can't do that. These retards. And they were beaming Paul. I don't care what anybody says. They were beaming Paul, not just his equipment, but Paul.
He'd started picking up these signals, and the NSA was scared that anybody could figure that out.
Yeah, anybody can figure it out. Then they start trying to mess with you. And what they will do is they will shoot heavy interference into your home so that nothing works. But now they don't have to move in across the street. They can be thousands and thousands of miles away. You got a smart meter, and it all has an IP address, and it can go right to your house, and boom, you've got a ton of interference. Smart meters were designed to have a dirty electricity field anyway, so they just up that to the point where pretty much everything you pick up is going to be useless. And not just interference, but also whatever signals they want. It could be a myriad of mindfuckery, right? So this is what they do. This is what they do. This is what they've been doing for years. And these suckers just keep buying it over and over and over. Oh man, it's disclosure. There's no disclosure, dude. They're hiding shit that they don't want you to know about that has been available to them for decades. It's just getting to the point now where they're ready to use it, man. And then there's going to be UFO attacks next. They're going to blame all these, these mystery fires at all these food places, food processing plants, all these nutty ass fires and bullshit, And what they are is they're SCADA attacks. They're doing SCADA attacks on the power lines with frequencies and overdriving these machines just like a refrigerator motor to the point where it catches on fire. Boom. Taken out. One by one, this is how they do it. And then pretty soon, it's going to be aliens doing it. And these people are going to believe it. Hook, line, and sinker.
They decided to just take complete control of what he was seeing and give him exactly what he thought he should be getting.
So that is what happened to Paul Benowitz. And I keep having to go back to the story and back to the story to try to remind people that this happens over and over. They did the same thing to Bill Cooper, William Cooper, Bill Cooper, whatever you want to call him. They did the same thing to him. And he eventually figured it out and says, wait a minute, these aren't UFOs. This is the scam. They have been pulling the scam over and over, and generations fall for it until they hit 35 to 45, and then they wake up. Some people never wake up. It's amazing. This is what's going on. You people out there are pygmies, man. Pygmies in front of a hut, and some dude shows up with a big lighter, and you think it's witchcraft. They're doing the same thing. You haven't kept up with what is real because you believed it was conspiracy theory. And this technology all exists, and you are getting fooled. You think it's so out there and basically witchcrafty that it couldn't possibly be human. When we've been working on this stuff for 80 years, they have been able to project sound since the late 60s, man. Most of these weapons were in operation by the late 80s. And the ELF took over the globe by 91 and 93 is when it really kicked in. So, you get these people that are just high off their asses, man. Pygmies getting, tricked into believing that a cell phone is witchcraft or a Bic lighter is witchcraft. It's amazing. Fuck you guys. Wake the fuck up, man. Amazing, dude. Just amazing. For everyone that's been around forever watching my videos, I get it. You've had to watch Paul Benowitz 2 or 3 times now, but I keep having to go back to that to try to wake people up because it's the epitome of what these people do to people all the time. There was a period here, flat out, where I couldn't even record audio. I couldn't talk into a mic on a computer, on a recorder, on anything electronic that plugged into the wall, because it was so full of interference. The interference was actually louder than my voice. I have videos on that from the past. It was amazing. I had to filter everything just to make an audio recording, talk into a microphone so that people could hear it. This is what they do to people, man. And I'm not saying that there were people out in the bushes, pointing shit at my house. They don't have to do that. It's a fucking smart meter. And even if it doesn't have an antenna in it, even if the antenna is turned off, they can still use it because you still have an IP address at that meter now. That's the difference. It doesn't have to originate from the grid. It just gets on the grid. Okay, now there's this video, a dozen people sent me links to this video, and it's a guy doing an interview on YouTube, going into different things about intrusive thought devices and basically voice of God weapons. And someone said that this is validation. And as I watched it, I sent it to a few people. And it's weird because a little over a month ago, I joked around in the video called The Crash Course in Psychic Driving. And I talked about the possibilities of this thing being used to advertise McDonald's into people's heads, right? All of a sudden, these people online on other websites are talking about McDonald's being able to send this to you as a fact, when I was joking around about it and said it was a hypothetical thing. This guy, I don't know what his intention is yet. I would like to talk to him, is saying that that McDonald's is doing that a little over a month after I said that, and that was the first time anybody's really talked about that online. I found that really strange. He also talks about quote-unquote skin issues, which is exactly what I have called these things over the years to simplify everything that happens with the skin. But somebody was saying that this validates what I've been talking about. The proof that I have on my channel would validate what he's talking about. But I would like to know where he got his information from, because it's very interesting. It's very interesting because it's so parallel with the stuff that I've talked about on my channel. I'm very curious as to what this guy is all about. So if you're out there, hit me up. I know that none of these people will, but I'm really surprised that the SWAT rat has been kept as quiet as it has since its unveiling. But there you go. I kind of expected it, but I'm surprised at how well it's being held back. I'm going to be doing a lot of experiments soon. I am crazy busy, and this is the first time I've ever done a video hooked up to generator power, because guess what? My power's been out for like 2 days. This whole area is conked out. I got the generator running and decided to make a video. I've got a lot more to talk about, but I can't cram it into this video. That's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
You seem to have given this a fair bit of thought.
It's my job to think as dark wizards do. Perhaps you remember. I believe in a practical approach. You need to know what you're up against. You need to be prepared.